the city of New York is buzzing with excitement and debate following a hotly contested vote to select the Democratic Party's candidate for mayor. And while the election isn't until November, there's already been an enormous amount of buzz around the man who won the primary, Zohran Mamdani, who campaigned on a platform of democratic socialism and pro-Palestinian positions. Yesterday, MEE reporter Maysa Mustafa spoke to New York residents about why they were excited about the prospect of Mamdani becoming their next mayor.
Last night, 33-year-old Muslim candidate Zohran Mamdani defied all odds in the New York Democratic primary, defeating former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani ran one of the most unapologetically pro-Palestine and socialist campaigns in New York electoral politics history, which marked a significant moment in progressive organizing here in the city. Although his campaign focused on bread and butter issues such as public transportation or housing, a lot of the conversation that revolved around Mamdani was on his critique of Israel, which his opposition used to demonize him in an attempt to portray him as anti-Semitic. We're asking the city what Mamdani's win last night might mean for New York, which has never seen a young South Asian Muslim mayor, and whether they think he'll win in the mayoral election in November.
He genuinely ran a campaign. I think Cuomo even admitted it. He ran a very strong campaign where he was able to get amongst the people, especially the youth, get them out to vote. It's a left-leaning city, but I think we're even going farther to the left and reaching more into the socialism aspect, which I think was a big part of his campaign. So I think it's exciting. Also, a Muslim brown man as a mayor of New York City is indicative of maybe a changing of the tides of the broader political climate in the U.S. as well. Maybe a general movement, and this has happened in recent elections when you think about the presidential elections, maybe it's time for some newer blood in the political scenes. Obviously Trump and Biden, very old candidates. And so I think maybe that's also a trickle-down effect onto Cuomo.
Him winning speaks a lot to what New Yorkers believe in. They believe in diversity, and I stand with that, obviously, as a South Asian woman myself. So I think as somebody who sees myself in him, I think it's really exciting to see that New York also embraces that kind of culture and that heritage.
Especially for Gen Z kids of color, Muslim kids, I think the Democratic establishment has this idea that being moderate and being centrist in a lot of their views is what's going to galvanize the Democratic Party, and trying to see if we can meet in the middle and get this huge grasp on all of America. But to have somebody so clear on his values and where he stands, especially with Palestine, I think galvanized a lot of Gen Z, especially with the recent presidential election. I think everyone all over America, especially Gen Z folks, have questioned a lot of the Democratic Party and the Democratic establishment and wanting them to take more stronger stances. Having somebody that's progressive and believes in our values, that we also continue to be advocates for those platforms, that we continue to hold politicians accountable. Zohran winning the primary and inshallah winning mayor, we still have to have that accountability relationship with our politicians.
I was really proud of my city for pulling through. I think it was about time for a turnaround and for us to vote for someone who actually cares about representing the city and the people. And I think he really proved his point well during those interviews when people were constantly asking him about his support for Israel and how he was, he didn't really respond to it because he knew that they were going to try and trap him. So him responding and being I'm here to represent New York, I will happily talk with the Jewish community in New York, that's where I belong, that's what my position is. And I think that alone, I really wanted to stand with him after that. I was that's the whole position, that's the whole point, you're being the mayor of New York. We're finally realizing that the government is supposed to represent us, the people, and that we actually do have the power to speak up and change things. We just have to utilize the community and come together. And I think that this mayoral race really kind of showed how that can really turn things around. And I think that after this, I hope that New York will come together more and really start to utilize our power as the people to fix what we want fixed.
But not everyone is excited about Zohran Mamdani. In fact, some of the reactions to his win have been, and if I would say it, pretty unhinged. To tell us more, we're joined in the studio by MEE reporter Mohammed Saleh. Mohammed, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
Now, give us a sense of who Zohran Mamdani is and how his campaign has gained so much traction so quickly.
So Zohran is this very interesting young, openly socialist and very pro-Palestine mayoral candidate. He came in with a very fresh and different campaign to run for mayor. Obviously, New York is a very, very diverse, huge city. You have from the far left to the far right in New York. It's a population of around 8.2 million, so it's a very, very big city. Of course, you have Wall Street in New York, and you have it's the financial capital of the world. So Zohran positioned himself in a way that I think he knew who he is, of course, and he appealed to the younger people and to more of the working class. Him and his campaigning team, they said that their campaign will make New York a lot more affordable and livable for the working class. Of course, people in New York have recently been, not just recently, for the past few years, they've been complaining a lot about the cost of living. It's skyrocketed, and rent is a huge problem in New York. So Zohran Mamdani said that he will freeze rent prices for some types of apartments. He'll make bus fares free, and he'll make childcare more affordable. That will heavily appeal to the working class in New York. And then the style in which he presented his campaign and the way that he did it was really down with the people. He was out on the streets a lot of the time. He had very good videography and social media presence, and that went a long way. New York is one of the coolest cities, considered one of the coolest cities. And to succeed in New York, I think you do have to have a good social media presence, and you have to appeal to the young people. And of course, we work in video and social media, and the quality of his stuff was very good. We were talking recently about the video quality. It was very bright. It was very colorful. It was out there, and it's easy social media content to kind of interact with, and it's very appealing. It's interesting because his opposition figure, Andrew Cuomo,
the former governor of New York.
New York had that kind of old-fashioned style. He had these very print-heavy social media campaigns, which were not that appealing. But of course, that appeals to, maybe it doesn't actually appeal to them, but it resonates with, or it kind of it's received in Andrew Cuomo's audience, which is maybe the more formal, the upper class. So Zohran received a lot of endorsements by a lot of popular figures, Bernie Sanders, AOC, people that, again, they resonate with the more working class and the younger crowd. And then also a lot of celebrity endorsements. The model, Emily Ratajkowski, she endorsed his campaign. The guy who does the subway takes. These are people that the young people will know very well, but older people in New York and even around the world, they won't know as much. So the way he positioned himself his campaigning style matched his campaigns. There was good synergy there.
And a lot of the content has been filling my own feeds, and I don't live in New York. I'm not American. Neither of us are. And yet it has been hard to escape the excitement that has been built around this one man for in a very short amount of time. And this is somebody that was a political newcomer just a couple of months ago. Most of the people, certainly outside of New York, had never heard of him before. And he was up against somebody like Andrew Cuomo, who comes from a family legacy of politicians in New York. His father was the governor of New York. He was the governor of New York. And so it was an insurmountable a campaign to have to run against a lot of very established figures. And you saw some of those reactions. We heard from some of these people in New York, young people, as you mentioned, very galvanized by this campaign. But at the same time, there's been this other side, other reaction that has been equally as strong, that it was very antagonistic towards Zohran. And ever since he won, we've been getting a lot of reactions in the media, in the political space. What have we been hearing?
So it's been very mixed reactions. His fan base and supporter base have kind of embraced that social media presence and that social media character. A lot of sarcasm, a lot of kind of hot takes of what New York could be like, but in a sarcastic, satirical way, but kind of in appreciation of Zohran and his style. But there were also sarcastic responses to the far-right responses, which heavily tried to criticize Zohran. Zohran is Muslim, of course, and he's very pro-Palestine, but he's very socialist. So they didn't pick up on the socialist aspect as much as they did on him being Muslim. They tried to say that Sharia law will be implemented in New York, and they used AI images of what that may look like, dressing up the Statue of Liberty in a abaya and full head covering.
This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a state representative inside the Congress, very strong supporter of Donald Trump, of course, a Republican.
Exactly, and she's considered a huge conspiracy theorist as
Yes.
well. So she doesn't have a lot of credibility going to begin with, but she has 1.5 million followers on Twitter or X. So she has a large following, and this tweet itself got 27 million views on Twitter. So
unbelievable.
She has a big following, and she kind of took that whole overly exaggerated style to try and spark as much outrage as possible, and it created that discussion of what will New York City look like under Zohran as mayor. It obviously will never be that, and they had to use AI images to do that. Other people on social media also accused him of being a jihadi or extremist, although he's never mentioned any of these sort of things in his campaigning. So they try to kind of accuse him of being a lot of things, of being an Islamist, but I think him as a person and his policies are more socialist rather than informed by him being a Muslim or a Shia Muslim. I think one of the things that he did express in terms of policy would be when he was interviewed by Mehdi Hassan, and he was asked if he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he came to New York, and he said that yes, as New York City, we would be a city or a city that implements international law, and he said yes, we would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. But there's an arrest warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu from the ICC, so that's nothing to do with his policies, him as a person, him being Muslim or pro-Palestine.
But it is controversial in the U.S. because Benjamin Netanyahu did
course.
visit the Congress and spoke in front of a crowd of got rapturous applause when he went there, and that
Congress.
was after he had that arrest warrant issued against him by the ICC.
And Andrew Cuomo is openly very pro-Israel, and he said that one of his first visits, if he was mayor, would be to the Holy Land, not just Israel. And he wore the ceasefire badge when he was running on the election day of the primary elections. So he was really up against, Cuomo was very different, contrast to Mamdani's policies on that.
Now let's zero in on this issue of Islamophobia. The Sharia law, the images of the Statue of Liberty and the burqa. This feels very specific to Mamdani's identity as a Muslim running in this mayoral race. And I wonder, this is not something that we just saw this week. This has been ongoing for a couple of months since he began his campaign. Has Mamdani himself responded to these attacks?
Yeah, he has actually. He's addressed them because they were very prevalent. They were very prominent in the lead up to the elections. We saw in the lead up to the elections what the response would be like from Islamophobic figures and far right figures if he was to be elected, and he's won the mayoral election race for the primaries. So he did respond to them, and there was one post on social media that came from a very pro-Cuomo support group, and they used a picture of Mamdani and they exaggerated his beard using Photoshop, and they actually the Photoshop was quite bad and part of his beard was sticking out, but they darkened his beard and they made it longer to try and show that he's an extreme Muslim. But again, they had to use falsified images to do that. So and he responded and said that clearly if he wasn't a threat, in terms of winning the election, then they wouldn't probably do this. So they tried to defame him. Yeah.
And there was a particular moment, I think, during the campaign when he is asked about asked about anti-Semitism, and what ends up happening is that it becomes this very emotional moment where he opens up about some of the attacks that he's been getting. Let's take a look at a clip from that speech.
And part of this is the very sad burden of what it means to be the first Muslim candidate to run for mayor, is to deal with dehumanizing language, to deal with a former governor who doesn't even view Muslims as being a part of this city sufficient that he would visit a mosque in the more than 10 years. And it pains me to be called an anti-Semite. It pains me to be painted as if I am somehow in opposition to the very Jewish New Yorkers that I know and love and that are such a key part of this city. And yet I know that when I share that emotion, I continue to face a language as if I am a beast. And it takes a toll to wake up in the morning and read messages that say things like,
So we saw the first part of that emotional speech, and what he goes on to say afterwards is that the reason that he feels so strongly about being attacked or being accused of anti-Semitism is that he has faced a lot of personal attacks for being Muslim. He mentions some of the direct messages or threats that he's gotten, people saying that the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim, and that this is becoming something that is a big part of his campaign that he isn't necessarily always open about. But this isn't new. So it's kind of expected when you kind of see a public Muslim figure in a Western country like this, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he probably knew what he was getting into, but obviously the extent to which this Islamophobia and discrimination has gone, it is very far, and it's also very unnecessary. Like, his campaign had very little to do with him being Muslim. He wanted policies that would make life more livable for New Yorkers, and there's nothing to do with his beliefs about that involved in that. So you can tell that obviously it got to him a lot, and it is sad when somebody who's trying to just run for a political campaign or a political position, their identity gets involved and they get attacked very personally. And it's surprising because, as you said, he said that he understands this kind of discrimination because when he talks about anti-Semitism, he understands it because he faced it himself. He faced the discrimination himself, and that's why he actually said that he doesn't tolerate the anti-Semitism that exists in New York, and he doesn't tolerate the Islamophobia as well. He said that this kind of discrimination wouldn't be welcome, and that's as he said, it's part of his campaign to make life more livable for New Yorkers. So yeah, it was. I think a lot of people were shocked with the extent to which people who oppose him went for his personality and went for his himself as a person, rather than just his campaigns, which they of course oppose, because one of his campaigns is one of his policies would be to tax the richest 1% in the city, to slightly increase the taxes on them. So it's interesting to see that kind of opposition to his policies trickle down into the personal. Yeah.